Welcome back, Bridgewater College Education 370 students. In this screencast, we're going to learn to add a couple of items to our Moodle page. We'll start by opening up Moodle, and this time what we're going to add are some labels, and we're going to add what's called a choice activity. We'll need to turn editing on, so we'll do that. You might notice that there's really nothing at the top of this page that even identifies that this is an Algebra 1 course unless I look way at the very top up in the brown section. So why don't we just add a label at the very top of my page here. I'm going to click on the icon to edit, and instead of using a default name, let's call this Algebra 1. Also, remember that in section 0 is where we put general resources. So we want to use that label, general resources, at the top. We can have some options here of what size this is. I think maybe heading 4 will be okay for me. And I'm going to save my changes. Now you'll notice that now I have Algebra 1 at the top. I've got general resources, which is what we'll put into section 0. While we're adding labels, we should label Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 and so forth. I have my Algebra 1 textbook with me, so let's click on this icon and let's add its title. Its title is Expressions, Equations, and Functions. So we'll save that. Let's add Chapter 2, which is Linear Equations. Save our changes. Chapter 3 and so forth. Now, on the Moodle assignment for our class, you need to fill in every one of these topics. In my algebra book, Linear Functions is the title of the 3rd chapter, so I'm going to save that. But I expect you to have completed topics for all of your Moodle chapters based on the book that you're going to use. So I've got my first 3 chapters, and again, I could take the time, and I expect you to take the time to fill in the chapters for the remainder of this book. Okay, so we've learned what these kinds of labels are. There are other labels that you could add. Now, for example, maybe I've got a whole list of websites under Chapter 1, and I would simply like to put a caption over the top of that, useful websites. So I could add a resource label. Label text is just going to be useful websites. And that's all there is to it. Save and return to course. And you can see the useful websites showing up there. I think to really show you how this can be useful to you, I'm going to flip and show you a different course that I have here at Bridgewater College. Here's my methods class for teaching math. And notice that I put labels at the top of each of these sections so that students will know what they represent. Here are some general resources. Here's some useful websites. So all I did was to add a label here, add a label here, and added a label here, and so forth. I'm going to go back now to our course, and this time what we want to learn to do is to add an activity called a choice activity. Now, a choice activity is simply where we ask our students to give us some information, to make a choice. In algebra, one of the things that I might want to know at the very beginning of the course is what kind of calculators do students expect to use in this class? They may have their own personal calculator. You may know that the state of Virginia regulates the calculators that can be used on Virginia SOL test, and there's actually only 2 types that may be used on an Algebra 1 SOL test. I want to find out if my students already own one of these calculators, and if so, which brand. So I'm going to add an activity here. My activity is called a choice activity. We're going to use choice activity a lot in our Education 370 class, and you are expected to have at least one choice activity on your Moodle page for the Moodle that you're doing for our course. So let's pick choice activity. It asks us to give a name to this, and my name is simply going to be which calculator, or what calculator do you own? You must give some introductory text. That's notice it's in red, so we must do that here. So I'm going to say choose the following. For the calculator you may now own. Oops, I wanted to say graphing calculator. You may now own. And my choices are option 1, it's a Casio. There's actually several models of Casio. And Texas Instrument is another one that's allowable. And option 3 is I don't own one. Looks like I didn't type that right. Let's try that again. I don't own one. Students may not own a calculator. Now we can limit the number of people to make a certain response. I don't want to in this case whatsoever. So that's why that's disabled. I'll show you one later where we do want to enable the limits. So here are my choices. I don't have a choice 5, 6, or 7, so I'll leave that blank. I'm not going to restrict the answering time to this. Display mode, I'm going to say vertically. That just lists their choices down the page. And I'm going to not publish this to students because this isn't really for them to see. This is for me, and I don't want to embarrass a child that says he doesn't own a calculator. So I'm not publishing to students. So let's save and return to course. Now, when a student comes in here, and remember we can switch to our role to a student, switch to student. This is what our students see. What calculator do you own? So I click on it, and it says choose the following for the graphing calculator you may now own. Casio, Texas Instruments, I don't own one. So if I make my choice and then save my choice, then I am in effect recording this for the teacher to see what kind of calculator I now have. I think I'll show you the way this works by taking you to another course of mine. This was a previous Education 370 class that I taught, and I asked them on the first day of class about what kind of internet device, an internet accessible device they had or had available to them. So let's see how this choice activity worked. They were to tell me, do you plan to have an internet accessible device, a laptop, smartphone, iPad, and so forth with you at each class meeting? Answers were yes, I always plan to have it with me. I have one and could bring it but don't plan to otherwise. Or no, I don't even own one. And they can save their choice. Okay, as a teacher I can now look at their responses. And I can see there were 13 of them. Turns out 10 of them had an internet accessible device and planned to bring it with them each day. 3 had one but didn't plan to bring it, and actually none of them were in the category of not owning an internet accessible device. I'd like to show you how I set this one up. So I'm going to click back and let's look over here to the side actually and edit my settings to this. This was the name. This was the introductory text. Here were my choices. But down here at the bottom, I said, well, display them vertically, but I did want them to show the results to students. And I did want to publish the full results, showing each student's name and choice. Because in this case, I wanted them to know if each other's choices as well. I like to keep this choice, yes, allow them to update their choice, and then save and return to class. I'm going to show you another choice activity that I did with that class. Form your group of up to 3 people. In this case, I wanted them to put themselves into groups. Now, I did not want any group to be larger than size 3. So what I did when I created this choice activity was I enabled the number of responses being limited. I enabled this, and I limited the group to 3. So once a 3rd student joined that group, that was it. The 4th student was not allowed into that group. So that's a handy item to use at times. And of course, in this case, I did want to publish results to students so that they could see who was in which group. Okay, let's go back to our class now. And I'm going to return to my normal role. Remember, I was in as a student. And we don't have any responses yet, as you might expect. But when our students do start to respond, I'll be able to come into here and see how many of them own Casio, Texas Instruments, or no graphing calculator for my course. Okay, as a review, today what we've learned to do is to add some labels. In addition to adding labels, we've learned to add a choice activity. You're going to be expected to add labels and a choice activity to your Moodle page. That's all we're going to do now. And next time when you come back, we're going to look at a different activity. See you then.